Hi, it's Margaret Ann with Eddify, and today we're going to go over sentence formulas that could appear on the ACT and SAT grammar and writing section. So before you understand sentence formulas, you need to understand the different clauses in a sentence. First, the independent clause, which can stand alone as a complete sentence with a subject and a verb. Has to have a subject and a verb. Next, the dependent clause is part of a sentence that cannot stand alone. Dependent clauses can be introduced by subordinate conjunctions like who, when, that, which, while, although, since, whether, than, and because. A dependent clause can appear at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end of a sentence. So let's look at some examples. Because she needed to ask questions. That cannot stand alone. It doesn't have a complete subject and verb, so that is a dependent clause. Then Michelle came to school early has a subject and a verb and can stand alone as a sentence, so that is an independent clause. Then if we put independent and dependent clauses together, we can get a more complex sentence. So after the exam, Michelle asked more questions. So after the exam, can't stand alone, that's our dependent clause, and then Michelle asked more questions is our independent clause. And notice that when the dependent clause introduces the sentence, we have a comma after it before our independent clause. Now if we look at it the other way around, Michelle asked more questions after the exam. Notice that we don't have a comma. You usually don't want to put a comma before subordinate conjunctions. Alright, so let's talk about the different sentence formulas now. The first one is a simple sentence, which is just an independent clause, because like we said before, an independent clause can stand alone as a sentence. So here, Alexa is going to Colorado this weekend. We have a subject and a verb. It can stand alone. It is a simple sentence that's just an independent clause. Now a compound sentence is two independent clauses joined by a conjunction. It's very important that you join them correctly or else this could result in an incomplete sentence. So you have independent clause, comma, conjunction, independent clause. And the different conjunctions you can use can be remembered by an acronym FANBOYS, which is for and nor, but, or, yet, and so. So an example, Alexa heard that temperatures would drop drastically over the weekend, so she packed her warmest clothes for the trip. Alexa heard that temperatures would drop drastically over the weekend, and she packed her warmest clothes for the trip are two independent clauses, and notice they are joined by a comma conjunction. Next is a complex sentence, which we talked a little bit about before, which is an independent clause with a dependent clause. So here's an example. Because she does not know how to ski, Alexa will take lessons on her trip. We have our dependent clause, because she does not know how to ski, and our independent clause, Alexa will take lessons on her trip. Notice again that after our dependent clause, we have a comma, because it introduces the sentence. Now a compound complex sentence combines the compound sentence and a complex sentence. So we have two independent clauses and a dependent clause. So in our example, Alexa's mom packed snacks for the plane, independent clause, but she could not pack water since liquids do not pass through security. Notice that we have our comma conjunction, very important to separate our two independent clauses, and that we don't have a comma before our subordinate conjunction that introduces the dependent clause. So let's look at some actual examples from the ACT. This first one, snowflakes begin to form when water in the atmosphere freezes. It causes the water molecules to bond in a hexagonal shape. Immediately, I see this as problematic because we have two independent clauses. Snowflakes begin to form when water in the atmosphere freezes. It causes the water molecules to bond in a hexagonal shape, but they aren't joined correctly by a comma conjunction. So there's not going to be no change. Let's look at B. Snowflakes begin to form when water in the atmosphere freezes, comma, causing the water molecules to bond in a hexagonal shape. That sounds pretty good because with causing, the comma and causing, we have a dependent clause. So that's independent clause with a dependent clause. But let's look at C and D still. Snowflakes begin to form when water in the atmosphere freezes, comma, it causes the water molecules to bond in a hexagonal shape. This still gives us two independent clauses joined incorrectly because even though we have the comma, there's not a conjunction with it. So that's still incorrect. D, snowflakes begin to form when water in the atmosphere freezes, comma, this causes the water molecules to bond in a hexagonal shape. That is the same problem as C because we have a comma but not a conjunction, not a comma with a conjunction to join the two independent clauses. So B, which will give an independent clause and a dependent clause, is the best answer. Our next example, Houdini, who devoted considerable effort to exposing hoaxes involving spiritualism and was skeptical about the existence of supernatural beings. So when we break this sentence apart, we have Houdini, which is the subject, and then this whole phrase is just one dependent clause. So we're missing a verb. So it's not going to be no change. Let's look at G. Houdini, who devoted considerable effort to exposing hoaxes involving spiritualism, being skeptical about the existence of supernatural beings. That still doesn't give us a main verb. So let's look at H. Houdini, who devoted considerable effort to exposing hoaxes involving spiritualism, was skeptical about the existence of supernatural beings. That works because was will give us a main verb, so we will have a subject and a verb, and then who devoted considerable effort to exposing hoaxes involving spiritualism will be a dependent clause that is isolated by commas. Let's still look at J. Houdini, who devoted considerable effort to exposing hoaxes involving spiritualism and skeptical about the existence of supernatural beings, that still won't give us a main verb to make it a complete sentence, so we're going to go with H.